HD.
Race to Mars. Brought to you by WestJet. Over 40 destinations across North America and the Caribbean.
We are go for Mars entry. Stand by. In 3, 2, 1.
Drogue deployment. Aeroshell jettison. Main engines. 103%. 8,000 meters.
This is not science fiction. Within this century, human beings will embark on a journey to Mars.
Z-minus 10 meters. Here. 4 down and locked. 4 meters. 3 meters. Contact. Life support telemetry is green.
Today on Earth, the countdown has begun for the 21st century's most heroic but deadliest expedition. The first manned mission to Mars. The journey will take a new class of spaceship, unparalleled ingenuity, and a new breed of astronaut. It is almost certain that people will die in the attempt to fulfill a burning dream, to explore worlds beyond Earth.
It is an amazingly complex undertaking.
It will be a 2.5-year odyssey across hundreds of millions of kilometers of space. One that will take sacrifice, daring, and innovation on a scale never before imagined.
These people are going to be spending an awful lot of time out there without any hope of resupply, without any hope of rescue.
The mission may answer one of the universe's greatest mysteries. Are we alone?
The thought that you could overturn a rock on Mars and see that, maybe, would be pretty exciting.
This is the story of a daring voyage that will change us forever. It is the story of humanity's first steps on another planet. The quest to explore the universe begins on Mars. The future human occupation of Mars is now within our reach. If we are to ever live there, we must make the deadly red planet blue. Plans to make this science fiction fantasy come true have already begun on Earth.
Today I announce a new plan to explore space and extend...
In January 2004, George W. Bush made a bold announcement.
We will then be ready to take the next steps of space exploration. Human missions to Mars and to worlds beyond.
President Bush stood up and said, we're doing this. Guys, I'm using my power, my presidential power, to say we're doing this. And it had a powerful effect on NASA.
It will be the greatest scientific undertaking in history.
You ready?
Engineers all over the world are already at work to get humanity to Mars. It will also be the most deadly expedition ever attempted. No spaceship in existence can make it to Mars, and the voyage home is even more risky. No one has designed a vessel that can escape the red planet's gravitational pull. The round-trip journey will take a year, and as long as another 1.5 years on the red planet's surface. No human being has ever survived that long in space. Cosmic radiation or equipment failure could kill the astronauts on the voyage, or violence after 6 months of stress. If they do make it to Mars, the poisonous atmosphere and cosmic radiation make chances of survival slim. And if anything goes wrong, there will be no rescue mission. Dr. James Garvin is NASA's chief scientist.
Getting people to Mars will be bigger than any single leap in exploration people on this planet have ever taken.
At its closest, Mars is 56 million kilometers away from Earth. Traveling to Mars with enough supplies to stay alive will be the greatest engineering feat in history.
Mars is 1,500 to 2,000 times farther than the Moon. The amount of stuff you need to go and come back to Mars is heavier than the International Space Station. We have yet to move anything that big.
11,000 liters of water, 20 metric tons of dehydrated and packaged food. In all, 520,000 kilos of supplies. No single rocket can handle so much mass. NASA now has a new, revolutionary plan. Step 1 is to launch as many as 10 rockets into Earth orbit. NASA has dubbed the rockets Ares.
The launch vehicle is the key to being able to go do a Mars mission because we need much more mass if we're going to go to Mars.
Ares 5 is NASA's version of an 18-wheeler, each designed to carry 130 metric tons from Earth into space. 1,200,000 kilos of solid fuel gets this monster rocket off the launch pad. Paul Delaney is a professor of physics and astronomy in Canada.
Ares is going to be the pivotal element to get all the components into space in preparation for going to Mars. See, if Ares doesn't work well, then we're just not going to Mars.
Step 2 is getting astronauts into Earth orbit. This is Ares 1. It is the booster for the astronauts' teardrop-shaped capsule called Orion. Orion takes the astronauts to space to coordinate the construction of the Mars craft. The length of a football field, it will take months for robots and humans to assemble it. With a target date to be completed before 2030, this will be the largest space vessel ever constructed. Once completed, Orion will dock to this huge interplanetary mothership, transferring the astronauts for their journey to Mars. Russia has its own competing design to counter NASA's Mars plan. Energia is Russia's version of Boeing, and they're about to unveil their own new manned space vehicle. They call it Clipper. The Russians hope to launch in 2018, and this prototype looks like a baby space shuttle complete with wings.
Clipper has basic flight characteristics. It's just like a glider. Because it has wings, the landing will be similar to that of an ultralight.
Like Orion, Clipper will carry cosmonauts into Earth orbit and dock with a Russian-built interplanetary spacecraft. Russia is designing a flight-worthy shuttle, and the United States is working on a teardrop-shaped capsule. Has a new space race begun? This time, the race to Mars? They call it the Mars Curse. Of all the probes ever sent to Mars, 2/3 have failed. Failure on a manned mission would cost 6 people their lives. No one wants to take that risk.
Looking nice out the window, glossy senses.
Today, the United States and Russia will call upon their allies such as Canada, Japan, and Europe to make sure no one dies on the quest for Mars.
I think you'll see that as a very, very integrated international effort, and I do not think any one country has the resources, either fiscal or technical, to do it by themselves, and I think it would be folly for them to try.
Not all Russian scientists agree.
It is a very good thing that the race between the two space superpowers, Russia and the US, continues. It is the natural aspiration of people to be the first.
Roger, the EVA is progressing.
After winning the space race to the moon, NASA soon lost interest. The last manned mission was in 1972. Now that's about to change. NASA's new manned vehicle Orion can be docked to a lunar module that will take astronauts to the moon. The astronauts will build a permanent moon habitat by 2025, a boot camp for the voyage to Mars.
There you go. Beautiful, baby.
But lunar training means nothing until scientists on Earth figure out the best time to go.
It's unimaginably precise. It's probably the best analogy would be like threading a needle in the West Coast from the East Coast.
Earth and Mars are circling the Sun at different speeds in different orbits. The Mars craft will set course for a moving target traveling millions of kilometers. This critical task is being studied by the European Space Agency. Their job is to help decide the spaceship's trajectory. ESA aerospace engineer Loredana Bassoni leads a team that's tackling this critical question. Simply put, it's either going to be a short hop or a very, very long stay.
As we all know, trajectories are going to drive our whole mission because it's going to tell us how much time we're going to spend in space.
There are two choices. Choice one is to leave for Mars when the red planet is closest to Earth, 56 million kilometers away. This option requires the least fuel, and fuel is weight. That's the plus side. The minus side is that the astronauts can only come home when Earth and Mars are once again close together. In other words, they must live for 18 months on the desolate and deadly red planet.
They have to wait for the celestial mechanics to, quote, come back into alignment. You're talking about Earth and Mars being in the right places at the right time to allow the vehicle coming back safely to Earth.
Then there's choice two, a short stay mission. It's riskier. The spacecraft swings by Venus and uses the planet's gravity as a slingshot. This saves on fuel. But the window to reach Venus is short. If they miss it, the astronauts will not come home.
There's no tide to carry you back to Earth. The planets move too quickly. We don't have rockets big enough.
The ESA working group believes the short stay mission is too risky. Astronauts will therefore spend 18 months on the surface of Mars, with no chance of leaving early and no chance of rescue if something goes wrong. Meanwhile, the Russians are blazing their own trail to the red planet. Shrouded by scaffolding, engineers led by designer Leonid Gorshkov have built a mock-up of the world's first manned interplanetary spacecraft.
We've made it a long way towards the goal, and we are practically ready to start the production of the ships for the Martian expedition.
After 40 years of trial and error building the Mir space station, the Russians have hands-on experience.
The orbital stations are the predecessors of the Mars ship. The real spacecraft will be bigger, yet supporting structures, shafts, and the shape will be the same.
Like NASA, Russia will launch rockets carrying huge pieces of the Martian craft into orbit and assemble the craft in space. Massive amounts of food, equipment, and supplies will follow on other rocket launches. Then there's a new problem: building the technology to fire the vessel's rockets in space.
2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery.
The space shuttle is hurled out of the atmosphere and into orbit, all from the thrust of the initial launch. It doesn't fire its main engines once in space. It's been over 30 years since NASA last fired manned rockets outside of the Earth's atmosphere.
That is something that for a long time we've forgotten about. We have not done human-class in-space propulsion since 1972.
Rockets are chemical powered. They require millions of pounds of fuel, and in space travel, weight is the enemy. NASA engineer Stan Borowski has one possible answer for the future. a fuel-efficient nuclear propulsion system.
The benefits of nuclear are its higher gas mileage, which is twice that of the best chemical rockets. That means we need less propellant and fewer numbers of heavy-lift launch vehicles.
Fewer Ares launches equals lower costs, as much as $2 billion per mission. That's a lot for the cash-strapped NASA.
But if we want to go for good, for a sustainable exploration story, the engineering solution that gives us nuclear propulsion will be a more efficient solution in the long run to opening up the solar system for people.
The technology for a nuclear rocket is already within our reach, but it will still take at least 12 months of travel from Earth to Mars and home again, and that poses a new problem. How do you keep 6 astronauts from driving each other crazy?
Mars 1, you are go for the Trans-Mars injection. Roger. We are go for the TMI burn.
A few weeks after leaving Earth's orbit, the first crew to Mars crosses the threshold where humans have never ventured. It's the point of no return.
When you go beyond that single bound with Earth, and you're on a positive Trans-Mars injection path to Mars, you're not coming home. You're going to Mars.
If there's an engine failure, the crew would disappear into the depths of space.
And liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it is...
Death is nothing new in the human endeavor to explore space. The world watched it unfold with the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1986.
Roger, go drop. 1 minute, 15 seconds, velocity 29.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue.
NASA has lost 17 astronauts. Russia admits to 4, but some observers believe the number may be much higher. NASA's chief scientist believes a mission to Mars would take more lives than those lost in the early days of the space program.
So what was the probability of success for Apollo? Looking back in time, was it 1 in 10? A mission to Mars is more likely to be in a failure probability of 1 in 10 and 1 in 5.
Garvin has no illusions. Untested technology, the sheer distance, and the hostility of the Martian environment make casualties probable. Then there's the human factor. One of the greatest risks of the Mars voyage is cabin fever. Extended missions on the International Space Station are nothing compared with the Mars voyage. Can any 6 people live together for a year in a space the size of a small apartment without someone cracking up? Jerry Linenger spent 5 months aboard the Russian space station Mir. He can't imagine the impact of a 2.5-year mission to Mars.
I was actually shocked of my time on Mir, of how isolated and how cut off and stuck with myself that I felt during that time, and also of how vulnerable I was. You have to perform at a pretty high level, but those psychological things keep eating at you, and I saw some pretty serious psychological problems developing, people kind of going off the cliff.
The journey to Mars is an exercise in boredom. Days slip away in a numbing ritual of science experiments, aerobic exercise, dehydrated meals, and sleep. Email communications with loved ones back home come with a time delay of up to 23 minutes, given the spaceship's distance from Earth. There's very little to do and nowhere to escape. Russia has conducted intense experiments to push its cosmonauts to the outer limits. Deprived of sleep for 3 days, this cosmonaut is put through the paces of mundane tasks around the clock to see if he'll snap. But nothing on Earth can prepare a crew for the psychological hardships on a mission to Mars.
If we can solve the problem of finding an ideal crew, then the Mars mission will be a success. If we make a mistake, these conflicts will kill the crew, just like a disease.
The psychological anguish is only one problem. The physical effects are much more serious. bones and muscles weaken radically in zero-Gs, and NASA still doesn't have solutions. Jerry Linenger spent 132 consecutive days in space aboard Mir. That's less than 1/3 of the travel time to Mars and back.
I was almost shocked that I had lost 65% of my strength level and lost about 13–14% of my bone mass in those weight-bearing areas.
One solution is to create gravity within the spacecraft. NASA engineer Stan Borowski has a plan still in its infancy. The spaceship will rotate through space like a propeller.
After the primary departure burn from Earth occurs, we jettison the propellant tank, and now we position the vehicle and can use small RCS thrusters located on the front and back of the vehicle to spin it like the propeller on an airplane. By doing that, we're able to generate artificial gravity for the crew.
The effect of zero-Gs inside the spacecraft are minor compared with the threats outside. Space swarms with massive solar storms and streams of cosmic radiation. The radiation on a voyage to Mars is the equivalent of 3,000 chest X-rays, unless there's protection. Engineer and veteran astronaut Jeffrey Hoffman has an idea straight from science fiction. A force field protecting the Mars craft from cosmic radiation.
The radiation is there. The human body doesn't like radiation. If we're going to ever really become a spacefaring civilization, radiation protection has got to be a part of the equation.
What kind of crew has the courage and the stamina to handle these deep space challenges? In the earliest days, NASA recruited fighter pilots. A danger junkie is the last person wanted on a 2.5-year mission to Mars.
But you also want them to be highly skilled and highly reliable in the skills that they bring to the mission. And those skills, there'll be a set of generic skills, the ability to work with technology, repair technology, understand how to make computers and networks work, and habitability systems, and repair spacesuits and space rovers. All those will be critical.
NASA has already decided on a mixed crew of men and women for its Mars mission. Sex in space is a real possibility on the long, lonely haul to Mars. But NASA's official policy is sex is okay as long as personal relationships don't jeopardize the mission.
It happens everywhere on Earth. It'll happen on the way to Mars, and just stop worrying about it. Just let people who have the right skill set right across the board go, and the other problems will take care of themselves.
The final obstacle facing the Mars astronauts is time. A lot can change on Earth over 2 years. Things that can be too much to bear, helpless in the loneliness of space.
My son was a little over 1.5 years old. My wife was pregnant. An issue that comes up is, what if something bad happens to your family on Earth? Should they send you that message and tell you that you lost your son? It'd be a tough time. I get choked up just thinking about it,
The challenges facing astronauts on their journey from Earth to Mars are devastating and deadly. But nothing can prepare them for the dangers that await as they ready to land on the red planet and face its merciless climate. Mars is a planet of hostile extremes, unspeakably desolate, unbearably cold, swept by massive dust storms, ridden with craters and canyons. It is Earth's arch enemy, a planet of death. December 1976, NASA's ring of global space antennae are fixed on Mars. In the dead of night, pictures from the red planet, taken by the Viking lander. Dr. James Garvin was an intern on the Mars Viking program. Now, he's NASA's chief scientist.
Viking went with experiments designed to ask about modern extant life. microbial life. It looked, at the end of Viking, Mars looked like a polar, sterile desert.
Despite its merciless environment, Mars and Earth share some similarities. The sun rises in the east, and a Mars day is just 40 minutes longer than that on Earth. But the planet has just over 1/3 of the gravity and an extremely thin atmosphere. The atmosphere on Mars is mostly carbon dioxide and is deadly. Near the equator is Valles Marineris, the largest canyon in our solar system. With walls 10 kilometers high, it's large enough to hold 100 Grand Canyons. To the north is an ancient volcano called Olympus Mons. Towering 35,000 meters, the summit is about 3 times higher than Mount Everest. The average temperature on Mars is about minus 60 degrees Celsius, and at night can plummet to minus 100 degrees. Relentless winds blow up dust clouds that create huge electrical fields, and the clouds themselves can engulf the entire planet for months on end. Monster-sized dust devils spiral 80 kilometers into the atmosphere. A manned space vehicle could never land in one of Mars' vicious dust storms. So on Earth, a couple of unconventional storm chasers helped NASA learn about what it might be like on the Red Planet.
Steve, do you see the big red barn to the west? Yes, I do. That's the monster that I wanted to catch.
Oh, yeah.
In Arizona, scientists Stephen Metzger and Brent Boss are racing headlong into terrestrial dust devils.
Oh, yeah. This is worth the trip, right?
On Earth, a good 20-meter wide dust devil that lasts for 20 minutes can fling several metric tons of dirt into the air. Mars is the same dry land as Earth, but Mars is one big desert springing up dust devils all over the place all the time.
Mars is renowned for dust storms, so you could have huge sandblasting activity flying around you. Whichever way you want to cut it, landing is going to be a challenge.
The Mars astronauts may have to wait in orbit until the dust storms settle. Planetary cartographer Ruslan Kuzmin helped NASA find landing spots for its robotic missions to Mars.
We have to be specific when choosing a landing site for humans. We must choose a site which is safe and is potentially suitable for future flights and landings. Our main tasks are to examine the water history and the possibility of life now and in the past. These criteria will determine the choice of the landing site.
In 1976, the Viking mission found no evidence of life on Mars. But it's possible that Viking landed in the wrong place, like looking for a jungle in Arizona. The manned mission to Mars will land in an area where it appears that water once flowed. Water means potential life, and scientists already know just where to look.
Mars also has presented us recently with evidence that liquid water has flown not just in the distant past or in the middle history of Mars, but also in very recent times. The Martian surface has, in many places, very discrete, finely incised gully system.
For the human mission to Mars, where to land is critical, but not as critical as the landing itself. After a 6-month voyage, the spacecraft is finally orbiting Mars. Now the crew must snap out of intense boredom and into action. Psychologists fear that they will be suffering from a syndrome known as attention tunneling.
Often in heavily automated systems, you can go from prolonged periods of boredom to moments of intense performance demand very rapidly. And you want to train people to deal with those transitions, those rapid transitions.
The Mars landing module separates from the main vehicle, which will stay in orbit. The exhausted astronauts now face the most dangerous part of the entire mission, entering the atmosphere and getting the lander safely to the surface.
Landing on Mars is hard because of many things. Number one, we have a large atmosphere, rarefied relative to home, to go through, with its own dynamics. When people, and even machines today, go to Mars,
The last 50 to 100 kilometers are the most perilous.
Once the descent begins, there is no turning back. In less than 6 minutes, the crew will either be safely on the surface or they will be dead. The landing module is protected by a heat shield that will help slow the lander to keep it from burning up. Adam Stelzner is an engineer with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California.
You're basically burning a hole through the sky on Mars, ionizing the atmosphere as you move through it, and punching a hole of burnt ionized gas. And that hot gas is looking constantly for methods of getting into cracks and burning the rest of the spacecraft up.
After entry, the lander sheds its protective shell. Weighing up to 60 tons, the lander hurtles through the Martian atmosphere.
8,000 meters.
NASA is experimenting with an inflatable heat shield to slow it down, so the astronauts don't burn up in the 3,000-degree heat of re-entry.
We decelerate at higher altitudes where there's less density but less air to be hitting, and so the heat generated is much less. And what this does for us, it allows us to land larger masses on the surface than we could ever put into a rigid aeroshell construction.
We're picking up wind. Roger that. Switching to backup. Standing by for transmission.
Millions of kilometers away, the world must wait more than 11 minutes to find out whether the crew is alive or dead. Six months through space and 6 minutes burning through the Martian atmosphere, the lander touches down safely on the red planet.
Going to Mars is really a huge step for human beings. It'll be a big step for engineers, it'll be a big step for scientists, but I would tend to argue that it's going to be an even bigger step for humanity as a species.
After 11.5 minutes, word reaches planet Earth. But then reality sets in. For the next 18 months, this hostile planet is their home. If anything goes wrong, there is no hope of rescue.
We will be operating basically out of the loop of handshaking with Earth, of calling Houston or Europe or wherever we run the missions. We will be doing it on our own.
You are go for EVA. Roger. Handle coming down.
The first time humans set foot on the planet Mars, we will be living on 2 planets. It will be a significant moment in history.
Months earlier, a series of cargo ships deployed food, water, supplies, Mars rovers, and living quarters. The astronauts' lives depend upon landing within a few hundred meters of the supply depot.
If you don't land near that stuff, you're not coming home. You know, if you're 200 miles off course and you have no vehicle with you that can travel 200 miles over the surface of Mars, you're going to die.
Their only hope of long-term survival is the Mars habitat, an interplanetary version of the motorhome. Only this camper protects against deadly solar radiation.
It does amazing damage to the top surface layers of your skin. And if you get subjected to it often enough, of course, the penetration to more sensitive organs in your body, the chance increases.
Outside the protection of the Mars habitat, the astronauts will face a world of deadly extremes. To work in a freezing, wind-blasted, poisonous atmosphere will require a space supersuit of unparalleled design.
To adjust your chart racer.
NASA has already begun field testing a prototype Martian suit in Arizona's Meteor Crater.
One of our big challenges
is mobility, flexibility, and what I would also group with that is weight, because there's a big trade-off between the two.
This new suit currently weighs 95 kilograms. NASA hopes to cut that weight in half before the Mars mission.
The spacesuit itself has its own life support system, its own thermal control unit, and enough mobility to get you around on the surface of Mars and protect you in this very hostile environment.
One of the astronauts' first tasks is to seek answers to the burning question, was there life on Mars? Or is there life there still? Scientists seek answers in a remote desert on Earth. Like Mars, the center of Chile's Atacama Desert is a dead zone.
On Earth, we find little oases of death in a planet that's alive. On Mars, we'd be searching for little oases of life on a planet that's dead.
Astrobiologist Chris McKay is searching for life that could survive the hostile Martian environment. McKay has discovered microbial life in this waterless world, and he hopes his work will give astronauts a clue to where to begin their search on Mars. Life-seeking robots will assist in the search on the surface and in caverns where organisms might be protected from the deadly environment above ground. One such mechanical helper is NASA's Robonaut. Controlled remotely, its human shape and 5-digit hands help an astronaut drive it via a virtual reality link. The robot can perform complex tasks dozens of kilometers away from the Mars habitat, saving the astronaut from a slow death from cosmic radiation or a swift death from suit failure. If life is found on Mars, it poses a new problem. Could one of these microbes be harmful, even deadly, to humans? And what might happen if a Martian microbe was unleashed on Earth? John Rummel is NASA's biocop, protecting us from just such a catastrophe.
Well, if there is life on Mars, we would, of course, like to learn about it before we brought it back. Life on Mars is very unlikely to present a risk to humans as a pathogen, but it may be that it's a microbe that our immune systems wouldn't recognize. It may be something that causes a problem with the environment. So we want to make sure that things are brought back contained.
This means the Mars astronaut could be quarantined. After 2.5 years away from friends and family, they might have to tough it out a little longer in a bioscrubbing tank. Back in the days of the moon landings, NASA used an Airstream trailer. The Mars mission will take something much more sophisticated.
I think a Mars return mission would be very, very different than the way we did the lunar return missions. Being aware of the situation of returning from another planet, a planet where there is a chance that life could be present.
Meanwhile, high in the Canadian Arctic, NASA scientist Pascal Lee believes that if the Mars explorers seek life, they must follow the water.
Everywhere there is liquid water on Earth, there is life. Might there even be still life on Mars today, wherever liquid water might be present?
Recent NASA photos of Mars show extraordinary evidence of running water within the last decade. NASA believes there may be a water supply as close as 100 to 400 meters below the planet's surface. Back on Earth, on the bleak rim of a crater, a team under the direction of Dr. Brian Glass is testing a drill for future astronauts who will be seeking water during their 18-month stay on Mars.
Say, Gail, how deep are we at the moment?
We're about 206.1 centimeters.
My drill took 3 days to go 2 meters into frozen, broken rock.
Drilling on Mars will be even slower and more dangerous. Again, technology will replace human beings to avoid catastrophe.
What my project does is, in some sense, it replicates a human drilling team. So we have software that does that. Listens to the drill, what noise is it making, how the shaft wiggles as it goes down, just like a human would.
Will we find life on Mars? The evidence so far is promising. "23 million years ago, a giant asteroid slammed into Devon Island in the Canadian Arctic. It created Houghton Crater with enough force to hurl rock into space, leading scientists to theorize that debris from other planets might have likewise fallen to Earth. The breakthrough came in 1996. Scientists on an Antarctic expedition discovered a small meteor from Mars. Inside the rock were faint traces of what many believed was life. The debate continues over the microscopic evidence, but the discovery gave scientists a tantalizing clue to an extraterrestrial mystery. "650 million years ago, ours was not the only blue planet in the solar system. Mars was also a water world."
Mars was a water planet. Some colleagues believe that in that first billion years of planetary history, when the planets cooled down and Mars and Earth were the two best habitable zone planets that we can possibly imagine.
But in a mysterious cosmic cataclysm, Mars was transformed. Its oceans dried up, its atmosphere dissipated. Debris from the Martian surface was scattered throughout the solar system. The discovery of the rock in the Antarctic left a burning question. Did life on Earth originate on Mars? And are human beings then really Martians? The challenge of sending humans to Mars is staggering. Countless billions of dollars of hardware, millions of kilometers across deep space, lethal cosmic hazards en route, and even more on Mars. Fatalities are almost certain. Is it worth the risk? What's the return benefit?
To push technology, to learn new things, to open our eyes to another world that may tell us about future courses of events on our own, to give ourselves a new perspective on our own.
We need to be challenged as a civilization, as a people. And without challenge, we lack direction, we lack purpose. And I think that Mars is the kind of challenge that we need, we desperately need.
If the quest to Mars discovers evidence of life different than our own, it will open up a real scientific possibility of other intelligent beings in the universe. It's a revolutionary concept, multiple intergalactic genesis.
What we hope to find on Mars is evidence of life that represents a separate origin, so that we know that in our own solar system, life started twice. And if it started twice in our own backyard, then we know that the galaxy is full of life.
The thought that you could overturn a rock on Mars and see that, maybe, would be pretty exciting.
After about 18 months of research, the Mars pioneers will begin the long journey home. The first expedition will leave behind a base camp for future explorers. They will bring more advanced spacecraft, rovers, and habitats. The 21st century Mars base will grow into a small colony, fulfilling the human quest to inhabit a once forbidden frontier. Our journey to the Red Planet will begin with baby steps. It may end with human occupation. Modern science already has the know-how to make the Red Planet blue once more. This is a serious challenge. The time may come when we need to escape from Earth.
Because if we've got a comet or an asteroid heading our way right now, we're basically no better off than the dinosaurs. There's nothing we can do except look up with a stupid expression on our face and watch it all come crashing down.
In 2005, the quest for Mars began with NASA's launch of the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Now circling the Red Planet, the MRO seeks a site for the first manned landing craft. It is the communications link from Earth to Mars, blazing the trail for the greatest expedition in history.
MRO will lay the groundwork for where the people must go. MRO is the big step that will bridge the gap from the all-science Mars program to the science and people Mars program.
Exploration, knowledge, the search for life in the universe. These goals unite people from around the world in the greatest quest of all time. There will be conflicts, controversies, and almost certainly casualties, but the course is set. The impossible dream is within our reach. There's no turning back. We're on our way to Mars.